Welcome to tonight's live stream. I'm going to get started in a minute. I just need to let everybody on social media know that the stream is currently on the air. All right, I've let everybody on social media know that the stream is currently on the air. And tonight I'm doing things a little different. I've got a very special guest with me for tonight's show. And he's someone who I would believe is an icon of science fiction and fantasy. He's the creator of the Underworld franchise of movies. He's the creator of the Marvel Comics character Blue Marvel. And right now, he currently has his own line of comics with an entire new universe of characters, Darkstorm Comics. And the person I have with me today is Kevin Grevioux, who I believe is an icon of Black science fiction and fantasy. And glad to have him on the air tonight for tonight's show. Kevin, how are you doing tonight?
Hey, how you doing, brother? How's everything going?
Oh, everything's good here in New York. I let everybody know who you are and everything that you've done over the
Okay.
years
All
in
right.
science fiction and fantasy. And I mean, I really appreciate you taking the time to come out for to be a part of tonight's show.
Oh,
And
yes.
I'm glad to have you here.
My pleasure, my pleasure, my pleasure. Yeah, I've been an admirer of your show for a while.
Oh, thank you.
So, yeah. So, I have a ball being in the industry, creating things that I do. So, I'm having a good time.
I'm glad to hear that. I have a good time myself when I'm creating stories. But
Right.
Uh, I mean, hearing about your career in science fiction and fantasy, I mean, you're a major role model for a lot of people. I mean, you've done just so much stuff over time. I mean, doing things from the Underworld franchise of movies to,
Yeah.
I mean, I love that franchise of movies. Just really great storytelling. I mean, and I love everything that you've done so far, like related
Oh,
to
thank
the
you.
characters like Blue Marvel and creating the whole story for that. I mean, I read that comic Adam, the Legend of the Blue Marvel, just absolutely fantastic story. I love the way you worked history in with the Marvel universe and worked it into the Adam into the continuity. Just that took a lot of skill and as related to storytelling, and
Right.
and I like what you're doing so far with this new universe of characters, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show. So could you let everybody know a bit about your background as related to science fiction and fantasy, so everybody can get to know you from where we are?
Okay, cool. Well, I've been a long time, fan of science fiction and genre ever since I was probably 5 or 6. I guess my first real love was dinosaurs because they're real monsters, and so that was a big thing. So I grew up loving all the Universal monsters. I think my second foray into the genre was watching Dark Shadows. I'm old enough to remember that gothic, um, what do they call it, soap opera,
Yeah.
and I watched that when I was a little kid, and so
Yeah, my
it just
brother was a
continued.
big fan of that show.
Oh yeah, and I just continued from there. I got into models. I came to comic books late. You know, I was 12 years old when I think I got into comics. But before then, there was models and all things genre and monsters. So, that's how I originally started. And then, as far as career, there was no way, at least at that time, to do science fiction as a career. So I wound up going into real science. So I got my undergraduate degree in microbiology, but I studied genetic engineering in grad school.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's how it all started. And then I'm not going to say I got sidetracked, but the science industry really wasn't what I thought it was. And I realized when I was in seminar one day that it looks like this writing thing uh, might come to the forefront of what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, and so I withdrew from grad school and set my sights on Hollywood and trying to figure out how to get into the industry. So that's how I began.
Wow. So you started out in science, and then you went from science to entering the entertainment industry. Was that a tough process to go through? Because I myself was starting to be a screenwriter, and I started working with screenplays, and I found it to be a challenge to try to break in that industry. I mean, what obstacles did you run into?
Well, the biggest obstacle is that I didn't know what I was doing. I was in Washington D.C., where I went to school at Howard University, and I didn't have the foggiest idea of how to break in. While I was in grad school, I took television and film courses, just to acclimate myself to what I thought was going to be the industry. And, that gave me some insight, but not really much. One of the things that I will tell you and other people too is that there's no correlation between academic prowess in the entertainment industry and success in it. One has nothing really to do with the other.
Yeah.
Um, you might learn some things, that are technical, in a way, but as far as actually breaking into the industry and doing what is necessary to be a success, uh, I don't know if school really helps you. You have to get in there and just do it,
Yeah,
and that's
that's what I've heard myself. That it's really hands on, and it's like you can't really
yes,
study for screenwriting in school. I mean, even if you read the books, it's not like working on projects yourself directly because everything basically changes every day, and you might have
yes.
a pages for a script, and it gets just changed the next day, and it's like a whole different thing.
Yeah, exactly. Not only that, academics don't understand how do I say this? I don't want to say the nuances of screenwriting, but I don't think they teach you about the business, which is what you also need to learn simultaneously while you're studying your craft. And I think that's the real line of demarcation between those who make it and those who don't, is understanding that. And like I know a lot of schools, they frown upon Hollywood because they think it's too commercial, or that they're all sellouts. Well, you're trying to make a living, and like I heard that at USC, for instance, um, a lot of I haven't really been impressed with a lot of guys who went to USC. Some, yes, but most of them just learn the academics and not the actual craft and a lot of those guys wind up not going into film. You know,
Yeah.
which is Rick is what's puzzling to me. But it depends on a lot of different things, how hungry you are, what your tastes might be, how willing you are to hang in there, until you do get somewhere. And it's not easy. It's not easy.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. It's not something that's going to be easy. And again, it's a learning curve as related to it, especially when you're a writer. Because some writers, they get upset because they thinking everything's going to be like the classroom where the professor tells you everything is good. But when it's screenwriting, from what I've learned, is that sometimes what you thought was going to be good is not really going to work on films. And you also have other people in the process working on a script, and they'll be like telling you where things are going wrong, and they want to have their changes in the middle of things, and that can really, it can frustrate a writer as related to process, but it's all part of the process.
Yeah, I mean, it's an amazingly collaborative process. And I don't always think that process is conducive to making good material, because there's a lot of politics involved,
Yeah,
a lot of politics, and you're going to have to learn how to balance all of those.
yeah,
I've had some, Underworld was a success, but, I Frankenstein wasn't. And, one of the things that happened there, I mean, just little things, they just derailed the whole project. Like I remember um, the main producer, the owner of the studio, or the production company, didn't want me to use any guns. So I had the story where Frankenstein was supposed to be a private detective in a Sin City like world, right? That's the
yeah,
comic I. And imagine Frankenstein with a gun, you know what I'm saying? You know, and shooting monsters or getting into fights with monsters, things like that. That's what it was supposed to be. But it wound up being something, you know, different and
yeah,
just banal. And I couldn't say anything.
yeah,
I mean, there were things that I saw that I knew weren't going to work.
yeah.
Just holes in logistics, and they ignored them, and they got a stinker. You know,
And that's what
that's the way it
happens
goes.
sometimes when you have the executive producer and the director. They have a lot of influence over things, and then you have studio executives, and they can just really derail a premise. I've seen that happen with so many films.
Oh yeah,
It just gets messed up. I mean, when I think about what you're telling me about I Frankenstein, it looks like to me they didn't understand that you got to have guns in a movie if it's an action movie. If you can't, or a noir type mystery movie, it's not going to work
oh
if you don't have the weapons there, because people are going to look at it and go, "How's he going to overcome the challenges?" It just they weren't really
yeah.
doing any
But there's
critical
also the
thinking.
cool factor. Exactly, but there's also the cool factor too.
Yeah,
And a lot of you have to understand, a lot of studio executives, they weren't fans of this stuff growing up.
yeah,
I think I've heard of one guy who was, and that was Michael DeLuca. He understood, and of course he's the one that brought Blade to the big
yeah,
screen, you know. But very few of them are like that, and so that's why they really don't understand this whole thing. I mean, if you look at the story that Kevin Smith talks about and the problems he had with John Peters and Peter Goober, it was that very thing. They didn't understand Superman. They thought they did. But when it came down to it, Kevin Smith said, look, you're a hairdresser. What do you actually know about a character such as this? And of course, that, iteration got derailed,
yeah.
So,
And I've seen so many good films wind up getting derailed like that, and it just can throw a whole film off. But you have
yeah,
made one of the great franchises of the horror genre, which was Underworld, and I
thank you.
really enjoyed those films. And how did you come up with that concept? I mean,
Well, it was a lot of things. I had always liked, monster battles. I think my first one was Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. And
wow,
then there was the House of Frankenstein, and then the House of Dracula, where you had all three monsters fighting. There was that. Then King Kong versus Godzilla. So I've always liked that kind of, interspecies, kind of conflict. Also based on some interracial dating I have done, over the years. And, I just brought those things together. And, the rest is really history, trying to figure out how to bring something like that to the screen. And I have to give a shout out to Lynn Wiseman because he was a director of the project. And, had been friends for a while. And he had a meeting at Dimension Films. And they were looking for a werewolf project because Blade had done so well for the vampire genre. So he called me and he was like, well, what do you think? And, I really didn't think much of it because werewolves aren't really, if I can use this phrase or term, sexy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Usually when you see the werewolves, um, the technology really wasn't there to
Mm.
do good ones. Like I think the only two werewolf movies to speak of, maybe three, they were The Howling,
Yeah.
which is the first time you saw a bipedal snout nosed creature.
Yeah.
Then you had American Werewolf in London, and if you want
Right.
to talk about the movie that kicked everything off, it was the original Wolfman. You
Yeah.
know, but they really weren't. Visually there are problems, like because of the technology. Like if you go back and look at the Howling,
Yeah.
the hair was matted. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The transformations took forever, and no one's gonna really watch that
It
as an
just it just comes
as
across
a
as real
character.
slow. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, and it's like you know,
I mean,
so
the only sexy werewolf was in Halloween 2 with Sybil Danning.
but what was silly about that I never understood is that they just had guys in hairy suits standing growling at the camera.
Yeah.
And so I looked at that and I'm like, how is this going to make any money? So, when he called me and said he wanted to, he asked me what I thought, I was like, I don't think it's going to work, but give me a week. And after, I came up with something he liked and he felt we should meet and talk about it. And, once we finished our session, I had this idea in the back of my head and I was like, look, I got another idea because if they don't like this, then we're sunk. The last thing you want to do in Hollywood is get a good meeting, right? And you pitch one idea and they don't like it. Then where do you go? You know? And so I said, we need another idea. And he was like, well, what? I don't have anything. And I said, now just hear me out. I said, what if we did a Romeo and Juliet story? But instead of Montagues and Capulets, we had werewolves on one side, but vampires on the other, and make it this surrealistic interracial love story against the backdrop of a centuries old race war.
Wow.
And he was like, he just looked at his feet and was like, I don't know, dude. Is that going to work? Well, the rest is history.
It worked
you
very
know,
well.
yeah, yeah, yeah. The rest is history, And so that's how it began. And so I wrote the original screenplay, and I was unrepresented at the time, and they brought in another writer, and so we made this thing. I wrote myself a part, which was good.
It's always good to do that because you can get
Oh
paid
yeah.
two checks.
Well. Part of the reason why I did that is because the industry is so hard to get into. One of the things I had come to the conclusion about is that you need to learn how to diversify your creative lexicon. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you just don't go into a particular industry knowing how to do just one thing. You're going to have to learn how to be adept at maybe several things to see which one hits first. So you can basically broaden the breadth of your footprint. in the industry so you can keep working. Because look, I know a lot of guys I started out with, writers, who aren't doing it anymore. They had to give it up,
Yeah.
because they didn't, they weren't able to make it and do other things to keep them in the industry. And you have to be able to do that. Like, for instance, I always wanted to be a writer, but I didn't come out to Hollywood to act at all. I did not want to be in front of the camera. But once I got here, people like, the size I had then, um, they like my voice, things like that. And it's like, I think you could do this, so I think you could do that. And so I started doing extra work. And one of the things that I, was able to look at when it came to extra work is that it is the best free film school you can ever attend. If you play it right, if you keep your mouth shut and you're very, very observant. And, a lot of people have come to me and they said, man, because like I started writing Underworld while I was, on a movie set, you know, and, people have come to me over the years and said, man, I remember when you were writing Underworld and you told me what it was. And they said, they rolled their eyes because, in Hollywood, everyone has a script.
Yeah.
But then they saw the bus advertisement when Underworld first broke, and they saw my name, and they were like, "Oh my goodness!"
Yeah.
He was able to do it. So, you know, doing extra work allowed me to be seen by different producers and directors, and also stunt coordinators. So I started doing, some stunt work.
Yeah.
And stunt work actually can get you day player actor roles. So you see how everything kind of dovetails together.
Yeah, I
And
see
then,
how it is. It's like if you get an offer, you just go with the flow, and it can lead to a another opportunity.
exactly, exactly. And what I try to tell a lot of young writers now, and some of the older guys are really or have been really resistant to it, which I think is foolish. I say, you know what? Screenplays are one thing. I mean, when it comes down to it, let me see if I have an example here. Um, no, I don't have an example here, but when it comes down to it, screenplays, I mean, the physical screenplay is actually a stack of dirty piping paper. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
However, when you have, a comic book, uh, that is actually a property, an IP. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That can be sold and exploited in a different way. And so what I try to tell people is, hey, look, you need to start doing comics, because if you do things like
Yeah.
this is what you want. This you own. This you can exploit at conventions when you do interviews.
And
Uh, they see you're more than just if you're an actor, more than just a pretty face. If you're a writer, more than just someone who writes the script. They
yeah.
see you as a creator, which is a cut above. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And can lead to other things. And that's very, very, very important.
Yeah. Because the screenwriter is just basically a spec script. It's just something that's on speculation sometimes, and that's not gonna sell because it's
Yeah,
hard
yeah.
to
Well,
sell
well
scripts.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah. Now, I've sold spec scripts before. But the
okay.
thing is, I think that when it's an IP first,
Yeah. Then you can sell it for more. Then you have rights. Then
yeah,
you have
yeah,
ownership.
yeah, exactly. You
When you're
have
selling film rights, you can sell TV rights. You can sell merch rights.
exactly. As long as you get what they call separated rights, you can do all of that.
Yeah.
You can
And
do all of that, and that's what you really want to do.
and that's where the real money is. That's what I've learned over the
Yeah,
years that you really don't want to just come in with a script because then the studio owns your property. And
Exactly.
once they
Exactly.
own your property and you sell it to them, it's theirs. They can do whatever they want
Exactly.
with it. But when you own the property, that means you can sell the rights, and you can also go out here and hopefully get in as an executive producer and
Exactly.
and have some control over your vision.
Exactly. And then you can go out and get video game deals, action figure deals, things of that nature.
Yeah,
And so I think that's the best way. And, to be quite frank, it's the cheapest way. You know, um, I think having a short film, that's fine, all and great, but you can't sell a short film, you know, and but you can sell, a comic, and whatever happens, it lives to fight another day,
yeah,
always, and that's what you're looking at.
yeah. That was one of the reasons why I wanted to do comics in the beginning, because I always was a big fan of comics ever since I was 4 years old. When
Oh
my
yeah,
I would look at the books in my brother's collection, and whenever since then, I always wanted to make my own comics. But as I got into the publishing business, I understood that comics can be a valuable asset as related to wealth building, because again, the whole IP thing is the thing that makes them a wealth building asset, because they are property. And again, in the entertainment business, property is something you can use to again build your entire wealth base with.
exactly. Like the adage goes, content is king,
Yeah,
and the more content that you can produce, I think the better off you are. You know what I'm saying?
yeah. That's what
You
I'm
know,
trying to do with SJS Direct. I was trying to expand into comics, but I'm going to try. I'm trying to regroup on that,
yeah,
because that's where you can really again make the money outside of publishing. Because yeah, you can make the stories, but the whole thing is that you really need that visual representation if you want to expand your business.
yes, yes, of course, of course.
So is that how you decided to start doing comics regularly, or?
Well, here's the thing. I've been a comic book fan since I was 12. And of course, I had had some comics before that. I think my first comic was Justice League of America 92, you know. And I had a few, some other ones after that, but it wasn't a collection. It was always like, if I had to, I could put my hands on one or two that were in the bottom of my closet or something like that. But it wasn't until um, we moved to Jersey, the second house in Jersey, rather, where, this friend of mine, the only other black family, one of the few black families on the block, he was an avid collector, and he got me and my brother into um, comic collecting. In fact, this one dude, his name was Bob, he basically influenced a whole neighborhood of young kids, white and black, to start reading comic books. And that's how I started. And it was funny because, I had always been somewhat of a hobbyist, but like I mentioned before, my hobby was models, monster models, prehistoric scenes, battleships, tanks, things of that nature. But I got kind of tired of it. But when I got into comic books, it's like this whole other world or universe, so to speak, opened up in terms of creativity and getting immersed in these, various, characters, and the like. I was a Marvel guy, and it was funny. I remember there was a comic book store near where we used to take our music lessons. I used to play the guitar, and we would go by there, and I remember thumbing through all of these books, and I just stopped one day. It's like, how in the world could I have missed this hobby? You know what I'm saying? And the thing that was cool about it back then, as opposed to right now, is that the point of entry for comic books was very, very cheap, money wise. I mean, comics when I started, they were 25 cents a piece. 25 cents a piece. So if you got a $2 allowance, you could buy 8 books.
Yeah,
And if you only bought 4, you still had enough money for a pop, you know what I'm saying, and a candy bar, or a bag of chips. Now, I just went and bought, I think it was that new book, The Power Company. Man, that bad boy was, after taxes, it was 690
Ouch.
one book.
Seven. That's
And,
what Mr. Superboy was telling me. These things are
yeah,
expensive.
yeah, which is why I don't really collect new books anymore, and, they're just too much, and
Yeah,
I find,
they're so expensive. People have to wait for trade these days because you can't get the entertainment
yeah,
value per dollar because it's just so expensive.
exactly, exactly, so, I just basically put buying new comics aside. And, I just, plus I have, I think, more fun looking at some independent books by independent creators anyway. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, the
Uh,
independent stuff is a lot of it is a lot better. I mean, the writing is a lot better.
oh,
The
yeah,
artists are a lot more inspired and a lot more creative from what I've seen so far with the books
exactly.
that I've done reviews on for the channel. Because I buy a lot of comics from indie creators, especially black indie creators, and
Yes.
there's a lot of great talent out there, and I like to give them a spotlight. And I wanted to give you a spotlight tonight because Darkstorm Comics, you're producing some fantastic work on there, and I
Oh,
wanted people to get to know your work and have you tell them all about it.
okay, cool. Well, after having worked at Marvel and DC a little bit, I've done work for both companies. I kind of saw how limited it was, and the fact that you can create something and there's a question as to whether or not you own it or what you can do with it, and they decide um you know your involvement. you know it's one thing when it's their characters, but when it's the characters you create, you don't like that too much. But one of the things I had to realize over the years is creators, you know when you're working on other people's characters, that's the way it is. You're working for Marvel, you don't own Batman. You know, working for DC rather, you don't own Batman. When you're working for Marvel, you don't own Spider-Man. You have to do what they say, and these companies aren't always right. In fact, I dare say a lot of the times they're not when it comes to cool stories for the characters, because everything there with corporate comics is done by committee. Um, when I created the Blue Marvel, which I partially created when I was a kid, you know, um, and did some other stuff with it later. Um, you know, I realized that we don't control, as Black folk, we don't control our own images. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And we never have unless we, create them and produce them and put them out from the ground floor up. Because you know, when it comes to a lot of this stuff, I think that what a lot of people try to do is make something very homogenized for everything else. And they don't care what the culture might say about it, and what their thing is, hey, look, we don't want things to be too, like, let's say, Jewish. They don't want things to be too Jewish. They might not want things to be too Italian, or too Irish or too black or too, let's say, Puerto Rican or Hispanic. Let's just make it nice and even for everyone and don't get too far into the respective cultures. And I think that can do some of these characters a disservice. Like, I thought one of the most brilliant things that was done with regard to that was when they made Magneto Jewish. And I was like, I was still, I think I was in college when they did that. But I thought that was so fantastic. I remember, kind of writing a letter to Marvel saying, be careful, because of the Holocaust and the origin they gave Magneto back then. I was like, I might be on Magneto's side. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
I might
yeah.
be on Magneto's side.
Yeah.
And I remember Chris Claremont mentioning something akin to that in one of these fanzines, that Magneto is kind of like Malcolm X, and he just cares about the future of his people because he knows what's coming, and he knows this because of what happened to his people, the Jews. And I was like, man, that's brilliant, brilliant. But
Yeah.
you know, that's just the way it is.
Yeah, but they don't really like to put that type of culture in their books because they want to try to get that middle of the road, middle American audience. But as a creator myself, I always try to put as much black culture in my books,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I don't care. I'm like, I'll put this stuff and I'll talk about things that happen in Jim Crow, like I did in a story called Isis Imitation of Life. I'll
yes,
talk about black men's employment struggles, like in books like The Temptation of John Haynes. I went really in depth on that, talking about
yeah,
black men's employment struggles. I talk about black biracial people's issues in novels like I've done like Spellbound. I mean, I don't care. I'll talk about those cultural issues, and people seem to like it when I talk about those cultural issues
yeah,
as
yeah,
related
and
to into the racial culture and intraracial culture.
right. And I think that's brilliant. I mean, I think there should be more of that. But I remember when I was talking to Dennis Cowan once about the Blue Marvel, and Dwayne McDuffie too, and they were surprised that Marvel let me write that story. You know,
Yeah,
and they were like, "Really?" He said, "Because they usually don't do things like that." But they haven't let me on the characters since because I don't think they want to get too deep. You know what
yeah,
I'm saying?
yeah. They
And yeah, so he's been kind of whitewashed.
yeah
And I think that's just the way they want them. They don't want us to have characters that we can respect and lionize. They want the characters, they create characters that they want us to have, you
yeah.
see. And I think that's the problem.
Yeah, they make characters that they want us to have that are fitting a certain narrative and a certain viewpoint, but then they don't really want black creators to really come in and really bring their fingerprint on those characters. I mean, that was one of the things I liked about Milestone was that you could really see Dwayne McDuffie's fingerprint on those
Oh,
characters.
yeah,
You could see him really showing you that diversity of thought as related to black culture. I mean, with
yeah,
Milestone, we really got to see again, Icon, who's the black conservative, Hardware, who's the working black man, the Blood Syndicate, who were street guys, and Static, who was the ordinary everyday kid. So, and
exactly.
Rocket, who got was a project girl, but we got to see black people from a larger, from that broader perspective. I mean, that was one of the
Exactly.
things I loved about Milestone. A lot of people would go, like a lot of these YouTubers would go, "Oh, those are blackety black comics," but no, that was black culture, and we really don't get to see that often in media, and that's something I try to bring to most of my books. It's like I'll bring you the fantasy, but I'm going to bring you the black culture as well. It's like,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I look at Dwayne and I saw a lot of, him in Hardware.
yeah,
And a lot of people don't realize Dwayne's background, his scientific background, is somewhat akin to mine. You
yeah,
know, uh, he was a physics major, and he was working. I think he was studying at the University of Michigan when his laboratory he was working at had yellow tape on it, restrictive tape on it, and he was like, "What in the world is going on here?" And he went to his lab chief, and they said, "Look, I can't get in my office; it's locked, and there's this tape on it." And the lab chief set him down and said, "Look, we've been looking at your research, and the government had some uh, um, insights into it, and it has missile applications. Now, if you're willing to be on the project and work on it from here on, we'll open up your ladder. You can have at it." And he was like, "You're kidding me." And he said, "That's it. He's out." You know, and I was working at NIH, back in DC, well, Bethesda, Maryland, really. And so when I created Blue Marvel, he was a scientist like me. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? And so I like that. So in a lot of sense, he echoes my upbringing, things like that, the things that I was interested in, the things I was a part of. You know, but that's real.
yeah,
Playing football, things like that. But they decide what they want to do with these characters. That's the way it is.
yeah. that's one of the reasons why I started my own company, because I was like, I kept trying to submit this type of work to people. I was talking about, I did a book called Cassandra Cookbook before I ever started really doing fantasy seriously. And I was trying to get that book sold, and they didn't like it because I was putting out narratives that they didn't like. A best-selling author friend told me that they didn't like
Yeah,
how I had the down low guy as the bad guy of the story, and they didn't like the fact that I had two black-owned businesses working together. I mean, some of these
yeah.
publishers, again, they have their own narratives, and for years, I would hit my head against the wall sending them queries, and I just said enough is enough. Decided to start my own thing, and since then, for the last 10, 15 years, that's how I've been doing things.
And that is the best way. That is the best way. And they can't take it from you. You
No,
know,
because you own it all.
yeah. And I think Kickstarter has been a tremendous boon, or I should say, Kickstarter crowdfunding period
Yeah,
has been a tremendous boon to the um, independent creator and the people who want to break away from, like Todd McFarlane says, the corporate plantation,
yeah,
of corporate comics. So I think that's good. That's a good thing, and it works.
yeah, because you
It
can't
works.
really tell the stories you want on those platforms, and I know that for a fact. I mean, 2005, I had finished The Temptation of John Haynes, and
Yes.
I could not. I had one agent basically tell me they don't do this type of book, and this was getting rejected everywhere because I was trying to do a black fantasy story that was a little bit of Buffy meets Ghostbusters with a
Yeah.
lot of black culture in it, but I could not get in the door with that book, and it was one of the best books I ever did, but I just could not get in the door with it. That's why I had to take it over to SJS Direct and do it
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah. That's what you have to do. And there are some publishers out there who you can talk to. You
Yeah,
know, um, but you just have to find them. You know,
yeah.
you
Well,
know,
I spent about 2006, 2007, and I just said
right?
enough is enough, and then, I just do it myself. And ever since about 2009, I just took all my books and started that in that direction, and that's how I started building up my whole SJS Direct universe. It started with The Temptation of John Haynes in 2011. Then I
Yeah,
followed it up with other books like that built up to the ISIS series. I started a book called The Thetas, which was about a black sorority, and I made a reference to ISIS, and then brought her in for 2012, started the ISIS series, and followed it up with the Steam series. So I've been
right.
writing a lot of fantasy. I even wrote my own vampire novel about 2020 called Eternal Night,
Oh,
which
cool,
which was
cool.
a whole vampire novel that's set in Harlem and is that has a lot of black culture and it deals with a lot of things with the black church and stuff like and the black goth subculture. It's a fun story all around, and I just love exploring fantasy and concepts and giving people that richer picture of black life.
That's great. And we need more of that. We really do. It's just that it's not cheap.
No,
But I do think it's more accessible in bringing to these a public medium than doing a
yeah,
film. You know what I'm saying? Because films can be woefully expensive.
yeah.
Even shorts.
Yeah, I know
I
it takes a lot of money to do things, and I found that out when I was starting to do comics. I mean, I found when I was trying to do I tried to do an ISIS graphic novel, but I just couldn't get enough money together to do it. But I did the Steam No Good Deed comic, and that one it was pretty expensive. And the John Haynes of Death's Door, I wouldn't have been able to do that without your advice. I wouldn't have been able to do that comic. But the whole thing is these projects are really expensive. I mean, artists cost money, letterers cost money, promotion costs money, and a lot of people don't understand how much money goes into these projects and to make them work and get everything together, get the logistics together, get the budget together. I mean, I've been
yeah,
doing this for a long time, and it's a lot of work putting one of these books together. Just a regular book together, a comic is twice as much work. So I
oh
understand what
yeah,
goes into it and the time it takes to craft those stories and build them up. And that's why one of the reasons why I wanted to talk more about the Darkstorm universe because Darkstorm comics because you got a great universe that you've built. Everything just really flows together very nicely in this universe. I mean, a lot of
yes,
writers don't understand how to put universes together. I had a viewer asked me about how do you build a world, and I had to tell them that you build it story by story. And when you put the stories together, eventually they build a larger world, and it takes time to do that.
Yeah, it does. But I don't think any of what we do is brain surgery either.
No, it's pretty
I,
easy, but the whole thing is you
yeah,
have to know what you're doing.
exactly. I think part of the problem that some new publishers have is that they have this school of thought that they have to create um ongoing series, and I think that's ridiculous. Don't do that. What you do is create as best you can stand alone OGNs. You know what I'm saying?
That's what I did when I started the
Yeah,
SJS Direct universe. I said, you know what? I'm not going to try to build the entire universe in an ongoing every day. What I'm going to
yeah,
do is take it story by story, and each story is just going to build into another story, and every story is going to have its own beginning, middle, and end,
exactly.
and
And
you
what
just pick up
yeah,
and you just pick up the ones that you want. And something I
exactly.
learned from Jim Shooter is just to make every story an entry point. And people have had no problem picking up SJS Direct books. It's just that it's how you structure your universe and just make it just about the story and the characters and get us to care about these characters.
Exactly. And something that I learned from, I'm just going to say it, Stan Lee, and just by, empiricism, you start looking at how he did crossovers. Okay. There were times like a character would just appear in a book for a couple of pages and just that's it. Just gone. And I remember that happening. uh Man, there were so many times, in the Fantastic Four where a character was just, there, had a brief interaction and then left. And it gives you that kind of like that sense of, community or
Yeah,
continuity within the universe that he's creating.
yeah,
Things like that. And I like that, you know. And so that's what I did. I think it was Spider-Man, and they didn't even have to be necessarily, announced. There was I think it was um, a Spider-Man book, and Thor happened to appear in one or two panels as Spider-Man was swinging through the city. And, Thor was going, and he saw Thor going through what he was going through in Thor's own book. So that kind of made you want to pick up, well, what's happening in Thor if you didn't pick it up? You see what I'm saying?
yeah,
Things like that. And I like that, a lot, and, you see things, of that nature, and it's like, I think this is how you do it, especially if your funds are limited, and there are other things, you have to get out. And, I've been creating now comic book stories and getting pages drawn now for, oh my goodness, probably since 2005. And all that I've done isn't out. It is not out. But, it's on my computer waiting for me to figure out how to slot everything, how to put them out, how to market them, things like that. And that can take some time to figure out, you know,
yeah.
that can take
I
some
know where
time.
you're coming from because I had to do that myself when
Yeah,
I went to a long term period of unemployment. I had to sit down and just I had stuff on the computer just sitting there. I had like three books sitting there, and I had to wait till I got the money to put them together. And
exactly.
even though I lost the job, I still had the logistics to put those books out one after the other, and I was able to get them all out and completely done. And after that, I was able to further build on things after that in
Yeah,
2011. And it takes time to do it, but you have to if you have the written logistics and outline, you could be able to get the projects out at a good pace.
exactly. 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 That's exactly how you have to look at it.
Yeah, because that's what I did. That's what I'm doing right now. I mean, I have a whole outline in my head for the whole Isis, Esteem, and John Haynes series because I learned something as I want to do a full character transformation arc with all those characters as related to
Yes,
their series books. And I have a series of stories that I have in my head as I'm doing them, one after the other. So I want to make sure that the characters have full overreaching arcs and it all ends and you get to see the overall big picture because that's all part of a run. Is that the run is like a series of chapters in a book in a way, somewhat.
yes,
So you're like each issue, yes, the hero's taking on a bad guy, but each issue is building into a larger overreaching arc where we're seeing this character change and grow, and
right.
that's something that people are going to see throughout the overall course of the story. So that's something I focus on with all of my stories. It's like each story is like each one. Like with John Haynes, I recently just finished the first act of John Haynes with the Godbreaker story. Now I'm in the
Right,
middle of the second act of the first story arc with the ISIS series. I'm in the middle of the third story arc, and with Esteem, I'm in the middle of the second story arc. So each
right.
arc, the characters are growing and changing, and we're seeing their development over time. And it's something that a lot of people don't really look at until they look at the big picture of the story.
That's right. That's right, and you're doing it the right way.
Yeah,
You know, and I just wish more people would, jump on that bandwagon because, you know, um, Marvel and DC aren't what they used to be, and nor do I think they can be. You know, they have to appeal to a wider audience. They're no longer as niche.
yeah,
you know, they have to watch how villainous their villains are.
yeah,
So there are politics associated with that. They're trying to change, well-established characters and switch their race or gender, things like that. So they're not even the pure characters anymore.
yeah,
Um, it's just not the same. It's not the same. And so
yeah.
people are finding entertainment elsewhere, you know.
Well, part of that I believe is because they have a lot of people they hire. They don't have publishing experience. Now, I learned that publishing experience is very important because publishers, you have publishing experience and editorial experience. You learn how to maintain those characters and maintain them up to a standard, and you also are working on with your writers and your artists to maintain a standard as related to keeping the characters consistent. So that's what's missing from the comic book industry, and it's really made it where the industry hasn't had a good direction for a long time. That's why these characters are so off the rails, and they go out here and think that they can use gimmicks like race swapping or putting a character of a different ethnicity in a role because they're not really focused on the craft of storytelling. I mean, the craft of storytelling is essential for comics. It's essential because you have to be able to know how to make a character's whole arc transform and help that character and show us where this character was and where they're going. I mean, that was one of the things I learned reading many comics like the entire Jim Shooter Avengers run,
Oh yeah,
the
which was brilliant,
Mark
brilliant.
Grunwald Captain America run, which I consider, that's recommended reading if you want to learn about storytelling, and the Claremont Byrne X Men. I mean, we don't have a focus on the craft of writing in comics, and it really has really hurt the overall medium.
Yeah, I think what happened too, though, is that I think that a lot of writers, artists too, have started to see their storylines, um, be, turned into movies, things like that. And they're not getting a piece of that. I mean, I look at Baker as an example. Now, granted, he did not create Bucky, but he created the Winter Soldier, a story in which Bucky slipped into and became a different character and gave it new life. And they had a whole movie around that concept that he came up with, and he got nothing. And I think a lot of creators they've seen that over the years, and their thing is, you know what? I am going to save my best stuff for me. Now, I'm not going to very well accuse them of throwing it in,
Yeah,
but they're saving their best stuff for themselves, as well
yeah.
they should. As
Because the
well they
work for hire deal is not a good one. I mean,
Yeah,
you work, you get paid not that much, but then the whole thing is you don't get those IP rights, and you write this
exactly.
great story, but you don't get paid for it, and that's one of the things that I believe has really hurt the business as
Oh
related
yeah,
to things. You can't get the talent to come in and give you great stories because they're gonna, like you said, save that story for themselves. And I've said that myself. You're gonna
yeah,
save that story for yourself, give them some mid stuff, and then get paid for the mid stuff like you would. But the whole thing is you're gonna save the best stuff for crowdfunding where you can make the money, make all the money.
yeah. I've even heard editors say, they don't like when writers, hold back, their best stories or their best stuff. I'm like, what are you talking about? You know, these people are trying to, make a living writing
Yeah,
and maximizing the amount of money they earn by putting their best stuff out there. But if you're going to give it to one of these corporate entities, what's it all for? You can't build on that.
no,
You really can't. And so you save that for yourself. And now I think Ed Brubaker has a criminal TV series coming up.
yeah, that
You know,
he owns that.
want to do, yeah, and that's what you want to do. That's the smart thing to do. But you know, that's just how it goes.
Yeah. That's why there's so that's why they can't really attract good talent for comics. And again, comics they are a way of creating IPs, but the whole thing is people would rather do it for themselves these days.
Yeah, and I heard now that Marvel has paid as low as are paying as low as 45, 40, $45 a page for writers.
Ouch.
Yes,
I mean, you
yes.
make more money at Burlington doing receiving.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I mean, $45. They don't even, I mean, there are part-time jobs that pay more than that.
I mean, and look, to be honest, um, you have to have another job if you're going to be a writer. In comics. I mean, you're talking about you might have to do 5 books a month.
And it still don't
Five,
pay nothing.
exactly. Five at $40 a page. You got to do 5 books a month to meet all your bills.
Yeah.
And don't have a and now, depending upon when you got your house or whatever, rent is more than a mortgage.
Yep.
You know,
Yep. I
and
mean,
then car note.
car note.
Don't have a family. You know, talk about a lot of money there.
Yeah. $45 a page times 22, that's not a lot of money. I mean,
No,
that's
and they've gone down on the page count.
yeah.
I hear it's like 20 pages now.
Ouch. I mean, I remember in my day, it was, in the '80s, it was 22, and I remember before
Exactly.
then, it was like like it was like 28.
Well, I remember when there was a point in time in the 60s or the 70s, it was 17 pages,
Wow.
but you were paying 12 cents. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But it's just not, it's just sad.
Yeah. It's sad what the business has become, and I mean, I have sometimes artists coming to me asking me about commissions, and sometimes I just don't have I don't have the projects, and it just really breaks my heart. I can't sometimes
Yeah,
give people work because some people are very good, but then I run into people who their work is not that great, but still I like to give people chances and stuff. But it's really sad to see what the rates are for comics. I mean,
exactly. Exactly. But,
'cause I remember in the '80s where people were making way more than that.
oh, yeah. And then, you might have to go overseas,
Yeah,
and there are some American artists who don't like that, and I understand why. But you can only pay for what you can afford, what your
yeah,
budget will allow.
yeah.
And
You
there
can
aren't a
only
lot of ways to make money in order to satisfy them.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
so
and I
it's
try
hard
to
on
work. I tried to work with some American artists, but sometimes they're not available. They got their own stuff that they're doing,
every
and
yeah, yeah,
and I would like that. There was one artist I always wanted to work with, but the whole thing is that sometimes they get a really. Sometimes they're like somewhat expensive, but I like their work and stuff. But I just it takes a lot of money to get like the projects done. So it's like uh,
yes,
a
yes,
couple of
yeah,
it's like. $200 or $100 per page plus 50 pages. That's a lot of money to put together.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And then you factor in what it takes to color that,
Yeah,
and then this is the big expense, printing.
yeah, the printing will
And
eat you up.
and one of the things that I discovered, like when I came in the industry, I was working for another independent company called Alias, which is defunct now. And one thing I will say about them is that their printing quality was excellent, excellent. Card stock all around, and it made the colors pop, glossy paper. And so when I did my own line, I said, you know what? The printing is going to be essential because once a customer feels the weight, you know, it has a certain value. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? And that's important. That's important. Digital is fine if I think if you need some books for a show right away. You know what I'm
yeah.
saying? It's like, ah, man, I need 100 books. Fine. Go digital for the nonce. But long term,
Like we're talking
you know,
about store shelf. It's a different story.
oh yeah, it really is. It really is. It really is. You know.
Like if I'm going to be on the shelf of Barnes and Noble, or if I'm going to be on the shelf of a bookstore, then I want to go get something of a higher quality. But
Yes.
for everyday, like a Comic Con or just a little signing here or there, yeah, you can do print on demand. I just use print on demand because it's all I can afford right now.
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. That's all you have. It's better than nothing. You
Yeah,
go for it. But in the long run, you have to look at your package and say, okay, how can I improve this? I would
yeah,
even dare say, going to, one of these top artists. And I personally think it's worth going to them and getting them to do a cover. I mean, I've gone to Ken Lashley, Ron Garney, um, David Williams, Dennis Cowan, Paulo Pantalina, to do covers for me, and they it really helps with the overall quality, of the book, and it
it
shows
leaves a
people that
strong
you care.
first impression on people.
Exactly, exactly. I look at that and it's just phenomenal. It really
Yeah,
is, and it's worth it.
yeah. I'm taking that risk
Frank Cho,
with,
Frank Cho, I did. Frank Cho did
yeah,
a variant for this last Darkstorm issue.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I talked to a very popular comic artist for Spinsterella Goth Girl Summer, and that's who's going to be doing the cover. But I don't want to reveal who it is. But it's a pretty
right?
big name as I know. I mean,
Yes.
he's a pretty talented artist from the UK who's well known. So he's doing the cover for Goth Girl Summer, and I'm hoping that it leaves a stronger impression on people than with my previous books because this one is 600 pages long.
Oh wow. Yeah, and I think that's great. I think that's great. I really do.
Yeah, I mean it's a cover that really pops. So and I've got
Oh,
a
that's
lot of positive feedback on it. So that's going to be coming in May from for the SJS Direct 2025 catalog. And what's coming up for the Darkstorm comics? What's the next book coming up? Because you sent me Darkstorm book one, which was absolutely fantastic. You sent me book
yeah.
two, which was landed on a fantastic cliffhanger. I mean, this book is feeling epic, like the old Walt Simonson Thor. I mean, every page just feels. It reminds me so much of the epic feel of Walt Simonson's Thor.
Yeah, that artist sadly died, you
Oh, I'm
know,
sorry.
and I had been working with him for a while. He's his name is Ruben Marighi. He's out of Argentina, and he died suddenly. And I was hard pressed to replace him. And but he did some phenomenal work, and that's why I liked him. His artwork reminded me of kind of like a Walt Simonson type, you know.
Yeah.
And so, the Darkstorm saga, it has two more installments. The next installment will be out next year, Lord
I
willing.
can't wait for that.
Yeah, yeah, it'll be out next year, and I hope to turn it into a movie one day. We'll see what happens.
It's got the
And
big visuals that could fit perfectly in a movie. I
oh
mean,
yeah, yeah, yeah. The problem is too now trying to find an actor who can play the role or who's willing to play the role. But we have a guy in mind. Can't tell you who it is, even though I've given a hint before. But I would really love for him to play the role. And we had dinner one day. It was great, and we've actually been approached, but we'll see what happens. The big book I'm doing next, my next Kickstarter, is called The Vindicators, and I sent you a PDF
yeah,
of the first issue that came out years ago,
yeah. I'll put that
and
up on the screen so everybody see it. Let me see. Okay. Oh, here we go. This is what the Vindicators.
yes, yes, and that's the book I did when I was with this company called Alias, and that's going to be the subject of my next Kickstarter, and we'll have about 96 pages of story, and some really cool um extras that people are gonna like, and really had a fun time, creating this series. It's about a group of superheroes from an alternate dimension or alternate Earth in which Africa is the center of that Earth instead of Europe. And what happens when the super powerful villain winds up destroying their Earth and they get thrust to our Earth, you know. And the new heroes, I mean, and the heroes of our Earth don't know what to make of them because the villain has actually followed them and got shunted to our Earth too, and now he's wreaking havoc. So they don't know if they're foes or enemies, enemies or heroes themselves, until they explain to them the situation, and they band together to try to stop, this massively powerful villain. So it's going to be a fun ride, you know.
Yeah, it sounds like from what I read, it was a very fun book, and I can't wait for it to come out. I can't wait for you to put it up for the Kickstarter because this book is phenomenal. I mean, I read it and it was just absolutely. It reminded me of old '70s comics with the big action and the big adventure. Uh,
Yes, yes,
I
yes,
mean, I thought of stuff like the again Shooter's Korvac saga when I was thinking of this story.
yes. Yeah, you know what, man? I really like, these big sweeping stories. I like widescreen action. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I think that's something that's missing from comics now since they've gotten so, dare I say, elitist.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? And they've forgotten what fun is. You know, they've really forgotten what fun is. Like, there's this animator that you might be familiar with. His name is James Tucker. And he's been quoted as saying, in terms of animation, whatever happened to fun, whatever happened to adventure. And I think comics they've gotten away from that.
yeah. They've
And
gotten way too serious and too insular,
yeah,
as I've seen. It's just they don't know how to have fun anymore, and that's one of the things I like to do. Is I like to have fun when I'm writing stories. I mean, I like to put stuff that's just big and just is a lot of fun to read, and just like you want to just keep looking at it. I mean, there are guys out here who are doing books like that. I mean, Isaac Bell, he's an artist. He does the Metal Shade comics, and I'm going to do a review of his
yes,
comic called Hex. I mean, he knows how to have fun. I mean, he has these crazy visuals. I mean, I remember one
exactly.
panel he had with with the heroes. They were flying in a flying anglerfish, and it was just the craziest visual I ever saw. But it just was so much fun to look at.
Right. Yes. Yes. Very much so. Very much so.
Because
Very
you want
much so.
those big visuals that just make you go, "Hey, what's this about?"
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, what we're talking about are Saturday matinees in
Yeah,
comic book form. You know what I'm saying? Godzilla versus King Kong. Ultraman versus, whoever else. That's what you're talking about. These big things that people can really sink their teeth into.
yeah,
Yes, I understand the attraction of Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns and Alan Moore's Watchmen. I get it, but let's not forget what business we're in. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we're in a business that's filled with big, crazy visuals. I mean, it's like pro wrestling in a way. I mean, with wrestling, you get to see all that crazy stuff. I mean,
Exactly. Or using my business as an example, Michael Bay movies. A
yeah.
lot of people say, "Oh, Michael Bay's movies are, they're vacuous, too much testosterone and all that." But you know what? Those movies sell, do real well at the box office, real well,
And they
and so
entertain the
that's what
audience.
it should be.
Because to me, comics they today people overthink stuff, they overanalyze it. You just need to keep it real simple and just keep it just lighthearted fun. Just that's what I was going to do with the ISIS graphic novel. I had a story called All That Glitters. I was going to do. I mean,
Yeah,
it was a take back to the old days of superheroes versus bank robbers, and I put in some stuff. We're making commentary with social media about a bikini clad bank robber who is flipping safes open, and it was just meant to be a bunch of fun. And I used to do that with the Steam series all the time. Just it was like demon pimps and demon strippers. There was one whole story like that. Another story with some witches that was paying where I was talking about making commentary like the facts of life and stuff like that, old sitcoms like
exactly,
that. Just
exactly,
absolutely out there stuff.
exactly, exactly. And if they can keep doing the cool stuff, I think comics have a chance to survive. But if they try to take themselves too seriously, I think the industry is in trouble.
And that's always been the problem. It's just that today's creators take things way too seriously. They try to apply so much logic that they don't understand that comics are not meant to be super logical. They're meant to be ridiculous. They're meant to be absurd.
Exactly,
They're meant to be big and
exactly,
over the top.
exactly. And if they lose that, then what are you doing? You know
You're in the wrong
what?
business.
And I will never ever understand that ever.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah, but you got a great concept with Darkstorm. I really love that book, and I love the Vindicators. Fantastic book, and I love the Digintara book. And you sent me the digital copies of that, but I had to have the paper one. So I
All right.
I put in the pledge, and I had to have the paper one for that.
Oh, that's cool. I appreciate that. I appreciate
I
that.
always when I see a good story, I try to have it in my collection. I've had my collection of indie comics has been growing for the last 4 or 5 years. So I was
Right.
glad to get that book, and I mean it was a really great story.
Oh well, I appreciate that, man. I really do. It was fun. And
Yeah,
that's what I liked about it. I like just raw fun, man.
yeah,
Like I said, that's what comics should be, and that's the way I want to, keep them. Just fun and full of energy.
yeah.
I think we can do that. You know,
That's what I like to have in comics is that you should be looking at the cover and going, "Hey, what's in this book? I got to go take a look at this."
exactly.
That's what I try to do whenever I'm doing a ISIS or a Steam or a John Haynes book. I try to just get your attention with something that I believe would just make you look at it and go, "Hey, let me go look at this." I mean, like for the upcoming 2025 book, I've got this John Haynes, A Thorn in My Side. I had Mike Williams design this cover here, and this was one I thought would just grab your attention, and
Yes,
I just
was
went out
good.
here and I took ideas from an obscure DC character called the Black Thorn, who was in the Vigilante comic, and I took some stuff with the
Right.
Black Boulet and stuff, and that's how I came up with this concept. But I like to do big, big, crazy concepts that really just get your attention and make you go, "Hey, look at what's going on with this cover. I want to see what's going on here."
Right. Good. Looks good, man. Really
Yeah,
does.
and I come up with stuff like an agent from the CIA from the Black Way. That's part of how I sell this book, and I just like to have fun with stuff. I just like to have fun with it, just like you like to have fun with it.
Exactly. And that stuff needs to be kept up.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to black characters, a lot of people they don't really make the characters multidimensional. That was one of the things I miss. That's one of the things I like about your work is that the characters have this rich life. They feel like real people. I mean, that's something I haven't seen since the Milestone days.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and I wish they do. I wish they do more of it. I really do. But I think when people get on agendas,
Yeah,
sometimes the agendas take the place of good storytelling and characterization.
yeah,
And it's hard to fight that
yeah,
because your editors like that as well. They want to be socially relevant.
yeah,
And sometimes it's just about having fun.
yeah. And
Good
that's
guys versus bad guys. No
that's what I
talking
like to do.
heads.
That's what I like to do. I like to do your good guys versus bad guys. Every story I try to do that. I try to just make it good guys versus bad guys, and just make it a fun story where you just get to see the heroes beat the bad guys and come out of it with a satisfying conclusion.
Right. I agree with you.
I just
I
like that. It's like that's the type of comics I grew up with. That's the type of things that kids like. I mean, with the manga, kids get that, but we don't get that with comics because with manga, the creators have more control. That's one of the things that's different with manga. The creators have more control than with this corporate comics, and that's why we're getting beat by manga.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You know. But I still think I like our comics better. I like the diversity, of art style, with
Yeah,
our comics better. I like the characters better, things like that. I just wish we would go back to the way comics were in the 80s and 90s. And everyone says that that'll never come back again. Well, that's sad.
yes,
You know,
it
because
is.
I
But
yeah, because I try to make Darkstorm feel like an 80s or 90s comic, and it doesn't need to be any more complicated than that.
yeah, because back then it was real simple. I mean, comics were super simple. I mean, you walk in a
Yeah,
shop, you saw a cover you liked, you started reading, and that was it. That's how I got into West Coast Avengers. That's how I got into
exactly.
Iron Man. That's how I got into Captain America. That's how I started reading Flash and Batman. I mean, comics are not hard when you know what you're doing, but just that people today overthink it.
Exactly. Exactly. And how do you deal with that? Ooh,
They overthink the continuity. They overthink the characters. They just overdo everything.
yes. So, so we'll see what happens. We will see what happens.
All right. Well, you said you have a list for the Vindicators that's coming up.
Yes. Putting together the site right now. What's going to happen is that I'll put it up shortly, and then people can sign up. For the mailing list. My mailing list
Yeah.
um will be Darkstorm Comics and Media at gmail.com. All
Okay.
one word, spelled out. Darkstorm Comics and Media
All right.
at gmail.com.
I'll try to put that in. Is it and with an ampersand or and?
A&D.
Okay. I hope this lines up in the chat. Let's see what. Is that it? I hope.
Okay,
Let
I
me
don't
see if
see
it's.
it yet.
That might be. Okay.
Let me see what I can do. Can you see it?
I think I can see it. Let me see, because I'm it's in the chat. Okay. I have it in my chat, but I just want to make sure that it's right
Yeah, let me see.
because I left it in there. It's popped up. It's right between Michael Gray and Gabriel, and I
Oh,
might just
yes, I do. I see it. I see
yeah. So I may just pin this up here so everybody can get it.
it. Yeah, so I'll probably be launching at the end of February or
Yeah.
beginning of March.
Great.
So we're
Oh,
gonna have some fun with that.
yeah. When that comes out, I'll let everybody know that the mailing list is launched. So because I promote a lot of different Kickstarters from indie creators, and a lot of them get a boost from the channel. So that's one of the
Oh
things I try to
yes,
do is do it so that the that indie creators can get the word out, because a lot of people they don't understand that, if you want to get good comics, you got to support the work, but we got to get the word out here about the work, and
exactly.
that's what I
And
do.
we have to learn how to support one another.
Yeah,
I got to tell you, I've been at convention. Like one of the things I try to do, I try to spend at least $20, on new independent comics. You know what I'm saying? That I
yeah,
see at these conventions. Whether they're from black creators or white creators or whoever, as long as it's cool,
yeah,
I'm there to support. But I definitely want to support, brothers and sisters in their endeavors because it's so hard.
yeah,
What's been difficult though is going to these places and a lot of brothers just walk by you and don't even give you a look. You know what I'm
yeah.
saying?
I've been
And
there.
it's like,
I was at the Harlem Book Fair. We just get ignored.
yeah, and I'm like, fine, but then you get, somebody else who is like, not us, and they
Yeah,
just throw your money, throw their money at you, and it's like, we need to support each other more, you know.
yeah. Yeah, thanks for the super chat, Ace Thunder. He asks, "Who's next? John Semper, Chio Coker, Dwayne McDuffie's Ghost." I mean, yeah, but I want to put again great creators on the stream. This is something I've wanted to do for about a year now. I wanted
Yeah,
to bring more indie creators on and let them promote their work and get the word out about their work. And I just felt like, hey, I asked Kevin, he wanted to come on, and we're talking about his comics, and this is the kind of show I really love doing. I mean, I did a show about a week ago with 2 weeks ago with Mr. Superboy from YouTube. Do you know him,
you said Mr. Who?
Mr. Superboy, or Your World? He's a popular YouTuber.
No, I
He's a
don't know who that
he's a
is.
big time comic fan. I think he would have loved this show.
Right.
I mean, he's a huge comic fan, and we talked about comics for 2 hours.
Oh wow.
We talked about the Saturday morning cartoons. We talked about comic books, and I mean, this was a show that I was really looking forward to doing because you're like a legendary black comic creator. I mean,
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I would go that far. I
oh, I'd
mean,
have to say you did a lot. I mean,
because like if you think about it, I only worked at I did what the New Warriors and the Blue Marvel at Marvel, and there were some other like one shot deals I did at
yeah,
DC. It was Odyssey of the Amazons and a couple of short stories. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
The other things I've done were either my own or from indies.
Well,
So
the
I
whole
really
thing
haven't
is
done that much.
the whole thing
Really
is
haven't done that much.
it's hard to get into this business. It's hard to
Yeah.
even get a cred in this business, and just having any books under your belt is
All
something. I
right.
mean,
Right.
having any books under your belt, because I have a couple of Facebook friends who would love to have the career that you've had. I mean,
Yes.
and would love to get in to do comics. I mean, just truly talented people. I know some truly talented people on social media who again are absolutely fantastic, and they would love to just have one credit. I would like to have one credit.
Right. 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 But I like I said, I don't think it's brain surgery getting in. I
Yeah,
mean, but one thing I will tell you that I don't like it being harder to get into the comic book industry than the film industry.
and that's
And there is
sadly
no
what's happened.
money in the comic book industry, or very little in comparison.
Yeah,
You see what I'm saying?
yeah,
And you're known by a relatively few amount of people, but you can be dismissed just as easily, you know.
yeah,
And it's never about the popularity, but it is about being able to get more work. You know what
yeah,
I'm saying? And the industry is too small, and because if one person gets mad at you, then the whole industry can get mad at you.
that's what I heard
And
about the Whisper networks.
yeah, and then there is I don't know, it's just it's so incestuous, and there's so many gatekeepers.
Yeah,
It can be maddening, you know. And that's why you have to do your own thing. You really do.
yeah. That's what I found because it's like the industry from the '90s to the 2000s, it just got so insular. I couldn't even get in. I wanted to
Yeah,
get in back then, but I didn't have the skills I have now. But I still wanted to get in. But I found it was easier to actually get into the entertainment to Hollywood than it is to
oh yeah,
comics, and
oh
we
yeah,
lost so much talent. I mean, I think we lost Joss Whedon, give or take what people say about him. I mean, we lost a lot of talent in the comics. If they had came to comics, they probably could have saved the industry.
yeah. But you know what? I don't think the industry wants to create superstars after what happened with Image.
Yeah,
You know, Image, I think, in a lot of ways, broke Marvel and DC and what they were doing. And I'm on the Image guy side. I say more power to them. But since they wielded so much power and they left Marvel in the cold, everyone got scared. And
yeah,
they said to themselves, that will never happen again.
yeah,
So they shifted to propping up the writers so the artists couldn't just leave and take their entire line with them or their fan base with them, you know, and leave them in a lurch. And I think the industry has worked hard now. I shouldn't say the industry, Marvel and DC have worked hard to make sure that they don't create superstars, especially not superstar artists. And let me tell you, as much as I love being a writer, the industry is built upon the work of the artist. You know what I'm saying?
yeah. The
It's a
artist makes the pictures that make the
yeah,
story come alive.
exactly. They are the visual architects. You know, and if you don't make them happy, what do you have? You know, it's a visual medium.
Yep, and that's the business. And again, if you don't have the good artists, you're not going to be able to sell books.
Exactly. But these guys have gotten smart. They're like, look, if I'm going to create something, it's going to be for myself. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And I understand that, especially with what's getting ready to happen, possibly with AI. It's going to be imperative for people to start creating their own now while they have the chance.
yeah,
While they have the chance, because once AI becomes what everyone feared will be in what possibly the next 10 years, you better have established yourself one way or the other. You know,
because if you don't own it, people will just make their own stuff,
yeah, and yeah, that's true. That's true.
or they'll start taking this public domain stuff. A lot of stuff is coming in the public domain, and
Yeah,
they'll
yeah,
start
yeah,
making their own stuff.
yeah. But you know what? You know what'll happen though? I think with AI, people are gonna make their own Marvel and DC comics,
Yeah,
and they might not be able to sell them, but you know what they will do? They'll put them online, and I can envision a scenario where the fan fiction that fans are able to produce with AI are going to make for better stories than what the companies are doing themselves.
and that would put the companies
Mark
out
my
of.
word.
That would put the
Yeah.
oligarchy out of business.
Ooh, we mark my words. Mark my words. You know, and then with films, you know, you have a scenario in which someone says, you know what, I want to see Batman take down the Terminator. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And I want it to be live action.
and they can make that happen.
Yeah, prompt it up. Hey, and once they figure out how to lock in continuity from image to image
Yep.
and how to make them move with realistic movements in terms of speed and everything else, oh, it's over.
Yeah, that might put a lot of actors out of work because you could just literally write the film and just make it come to life.
Well, here's the thing about the acting thing, though. I'm going to push back on you a little bit. I kind of feel that people will always want to see a human act because you can aspire to be like a human.
Yeah,
You know, you can want to fall in love with a human, but an AI image, nah, not as much. So I think that genre people will gravitate to the flash and bang of it all.
yeah,
You know, but I think at the end of the day, people want to see someone as attractive as Halle Berry or Brad Pitt, with the acting chops of Denzel or Robert De Niro or Jeffrey Wright, that want to see people like that,
Yeah.
and AI can't do that.
No, not really. And their video editing, they can't really do the
Yeah,
transitions and stuff. That's
exactly,
because
exactly.
you need a film editor to really make that story come together.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
People really
And
don't appreciate film editors. They don't really
no,
appreciate the work that they do.
and editing my last film right now, there are things about some aspects that didn't work. However, if I just take that 3 seconds of footage, that's all I need.
Yeah.
That's all I need. And that works. And that's where the editing comes in handy.
Yeah. I mean, what other, in addition to Darkstorm, you're working on films now too?
Well, I directed my first film in 2002. It's called King of Killers.
I'll have
You
to
know,
check that out.
yeah, King of Killers. And then I just directed another one called War Dogs, which is my second feature. In fact, let me send you this. Okay, can you play something for everyone to see?
All right. Did you send me a link to something?
I just sent it.
Are you
Tell
sent to
me
my
if you see
Facebook or?
it. I sent it to private chat. I'll
All
send it to
right.
Facebook if you want me to.
All right. Let me
Hold
see if I can get this in the private chat. Okay. Here we go. Here we go.
on.
We will. Hold on. Let me go to the clip. 1 second. Here we go.
You're all the very best in the world at what you do.
I want you to know that this isn't your typical contract. It's more like a competition. To kill me, king of killers. Or I can guarantee I will kill you.
We're still on for tonight, right? 8 p.m. at the Coal Train.
My anniversary's tomorrow.
Marcus?
Baby. Don't worry, baby. I'll find out who did this.
You're invited to eliminate the world's greatest assassin.
So who's the client?
Dracos. I'm in.
Where are they sending you? Welcome to Japan.
You set all this up?
I'm your employer.
I work alone.
Nobody leaves until the game is finished. And we fight hard and die with honor.
That's what I'm talking about. He set this whole thing up. We have to change the rules on it. That the only way we survive this is if we work together. All of us versus you.
How fun does that sound?
Dragos!
Told you I was competitive.
The king does bleed.
You sure you want a piece of that?
Who's next?
Wow, that's a lot. That was packed with action.
Yeah. But, that was based on a graphic novel I wrote. You see? And so you see, I got it made into a movie, and that's your modus operandi in order to make the industry work for you. You create the IP, you write the screenplay, you get it made into a movie. That's how
and,
you have to do it.
and you get paid all for all three.
Yes, that's what you want.
That's kind of what I learned about the business itself. It's like you want to be able to make sure you get paid for everything because that's what the business is all about.
Yeah, exactly.
And,
Yeah, so
and making sure that you continue to get gigs. That's what I read in Bruce Campbell's book. It's like he said, it's like in his book he had talked about. It's about how much work you're getting, how many credits you're getting, and if you're working every year.
right. Yeah. So yeah, so you can keep that up.
Yeah,
You know, but that's how you get things done.
yeah. But the trailer looked absolutely fantastic. I mean, it looks
Yeah.
good pacing, good action. I mean, looks like a pretty good movie.
Yeah, exactly. And my next movie, um, let me show you this. I don't know how much is she gonna be able to see. Um, I'm putting this in a private chat. Hold on,
All right.
hold on, hold on, hold on. I'm missing something. Okay, this will show you the cast of my next movie that I'm editing right now called War Dogs.
All right, we'll put that up on the screen.
Yes. And basically, this is it's kind of like Red Dawn in the hood.
Wow, there's a
Yeah,
concept for you. I like
yeah,
Red Dawn. You got a good cast here. You got Michael Beach, who everybody knows in the black community. Raven Simone, Kadeem Hardison. Oh, Joe Marie Jones. I always like her work.
yes.
Looks like this one might be a very good, from the cast, it looks like it's going to be a good movie.
Yeah.
Walter Jones.
Yeah, did a good job.
Didn't know a Black Ranger was going to be in this. Oh, you got Cole from Martin? Wow.
Yep.
Or Carl Anthony Payne. Sounds like the cast looks very strong. I'll say that much. The
Yes.
cast is it's very solid cast. And I know with your writing, it's going to be a solid movie, and the direction should be good from the visuals I saw. I mean, the visuals
Yes.
in the other film were just really solid.
Yeah, we had a good time.
Well, I'm glad to see you expanding into making your own films because that's where you really want to go after you
Exactly.
do comics. You really want to start making your own films and making your own material because that's where a lot of the money is, especially with when you own the films, you can make that money not only from the box office but also from the other revenue streams like streaming, home video. I know home video is not what it used to be, but you can make the real money on that side.
Yes. Yes. That's very true. Very true.
Yeah. Because that's what a lot of people want to do. You want to own the films and own your TV shows and stuff. That's how you really make the money.
Exactly. And when you might not be able to own, directly that
Yeah,
particular content, you own the underlying rights to the comic book that from which it spawns. You know what
yeah,
I'm saying?
yeah,
And that's what you want,
yeah. You want
because
to,
that will allow you to continuously exploit it.
yeah.
You know,
That's
you
what
know,
I learned, that you really want to own what's under it, because that's why the book rights, the publishing rights are important, because as the publisher, yeah, you sold them the book rights, but then you own the IP, and when you own the copyright, you own the IP. So then
exactly,
everybody's got to come to you, or they got to come to your agent,
exactly,
because there's a
exactly.
whole business side a lot of people don't really think about. I have learned about that business side, and that's one of the reasons why I started publishing my own stuff, is because the business side is, this is where the money is. You want to be where the money is, not just the guy who just, oh, I made it, like the work for hire, and then they're taking all your ideas and making money off it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. A lot of times, you know, you might have to give the first one away because that can be the point of entry,
yeah,
and you have to be okay with that. But it allows you to start your career or get somewhere.
yeah. It
You know,
opens the door for you.
yeah, the thing you don't want to be is too stringent when it comes to a lot of this stuff.
Yeah,
I've known guys that have written screenplays that they insisted on directing and or starring in, and 20 years, and they've gotten offers to make those into movies, but since they insist on doing one thing or the other, it doesn't sell.
yeah.
And those scripts are still on their computer after 20, 25 years,
That's
and they
sad.
always wonder, yeah, and they always wonder, maybe if I had capitulated. Or don't look at it as capitulation. Look at it as playing the game, as saying, okay, I'll do this in hopes to build on that.
Yeah,
So, if I had gotten mad about Underworld, let's say, or even I Frankenstein, and taken my toys and gone home, no one gets anything. You see what I'm saying?
yeah,
But, let me, I don't need to play, let's say, Michael, or I don't need to play Lucian, in Underworld. Let me play Ray's, his second in command. You know what I'm saying?
yeah. Be the background player, and
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then you live to fight another day.
yeah,
You know, that's what you have to do. It takes a lot of strategy
yeah,
to figure a lot of that out. And hey, look, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah, sometimes you let one concept go. You're like, okay, I just sold it, just got rid of it, and then I just focus on something else.
yeah.
Because what I
And
learned with screenwriting is you have to be very indifferent sometimes. That's related to the sale, because they're going to do what they want with it. So
of
once it's
course, of
sold,
course,
they're going to do what they want. So if it's
of
not
course.
really, it's not, you can't be emotionally attached to many of this material, and you have to focus on something else, because the thing is, you want to make sure that you get the sale, and once you make the sale, then you can have a way to get in the door.
Exactly.
Well,
Exactly.
yeah. Well, when is the Vindicators gonna come up for the mailing list?
Uh, Within the next week, it's gonna
All right,
come up.
all right,
And but I think that right now people can, shoot me an email and get on the mailing list, and that'll be a good thing.
all right. Well, all right. I will put the thing up in
And then I'll
hold on.
send it to you later on,
All
and you
right,
can shout it out, during your regular podcast.
all right. On my other live streams, I'll let everybody know.
Yes. Okay, good.
So I want to thank you for coming out tonight and being a part of tonight's stream. I mean, many of my viewers who are comic fans, sci-fi fans, and even many of my goth viewers, they're just happy to have you on the show,
Sounds
and
good.
we're really excited to have you on the show. And I'm really glad that you came out for tonight's show. I really enjoyed talking to you. I want to talk to you again whenever you get the Kickstarter launched, and I'm looking forward to having you on another show. So, really want to thank you for coming out to tonight's stream. And I want to thank everybody for coming out to tonight's stream. Let me put thing in the chat so that everybody can hopefully see it. Let's see, where am I? Where am I? Where, oh, okay.
Make your browser fast.
Okay. Here we go. Darkstorm. I put it in there. So, everybody, this is where you can go to get the information regarding the Vindicators. And you can also head over to the Darkstorm website and check out Kevin's previous comics. I mean, he has an entire universe of comics. And I wanted to shine a spotlight on all those great comics like Darkstorm because he has some really great comics up there. And I'm hoping you guys will pick up some of those comics. And I also hope you guys will pick up many of the books on the SJS Direct imprint. And I hope you'll be there for next week's stream. Everybody have a good evening, and everybody have a really good night.
Okay, thanks a lot for having